Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Gazelle, Senior Vice President of Strategic Marketing here at the National Park Foundation. I'd like to welcome you all to our Inside the Parks virtual program. A little bit about me. I've been with the foundation for almost 5 years, and it's a joy to work on this mission every day. I'm coming to you from NPF's headquarters in downtown Washington, D.C., and as a local, I have to say it's very tough to beat our National Mall and Memorials during cherry blossom season. Hope you've all been able to enjoy our national parks this spring, whether in person or virtually. But speaking of national parks, let's get on to the main event. We have so many great people joining us today. And like you, I've been looking forward to today's conversation with Anderson Design Group creatives. Joel Anderson and Kenneth Crane. At the heart of our Inside the Parks program are our Champion Society members and other donors whose support for our national parks safeguards our natural, cultural, and historical heritage. Your commitment to parks speaks volumes, and so far this year, more than 170,000 people like you have provided critical support for our national parks through their individual National Park Foundation. And a special shout out to our 1916 Society members, as they have created a legacy through a planned estate gift to support national parks in perpetuity. This is an amazing time to demonstrate your dedication to our national parks. Thank you all for your generosity and for joining us virtually today. And now it is my pleasure to introduce everyone on screen today. Joel Anderson is the founder and creative director for Anderson Design Group, a family-owned Nashville-based design firm. He is a graduate of the Ringling School of Art and Design and worked in advertising, winning an Emmy Award for his work. Along with his creative team at Anderson Design, they produce countless award-winning branding packages and poster art. Joel launched Anderson Design Group's critically acclaimed National Park poster series in 2016, and many other national park-themed publications have followed. To date, Joel has published 15 books and over 3,000 posters, and you've probably seen his work in national park gift shops and visitor centers. One additional note, Joel asked me to mention that you may see some irregular physical movements from him today. Joel shared with the team here that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 6 years ago. I know that must have been a devastating blow to Joel and his family, but he let us know that as his dexterity declines, he has begun a new season of collaboration, resulting in partnerships with other artists just like Ken. He still loves to hike and create and finds ways to adapt to any limitation. I was especially pleased to learn that he's active in advocating to help our national parks be accessible to everybody, which echoes NPF's mission. Joel, thank you for your willingness to share this diagnosis with me and with our audience today. And I would be remiss in not thanking you as well for your support of NPF through your Champion Society membership. Some time ago, Joel discovered the work of our other featured artist and photographer, Kenneth Crane, and the two hiking and nature enthusiasts quickly became friends and collaborators. Ken is a brilliant visual storyteller through his artistic work. By using a dry brush digital sketching technique, Ken creates beautifully emotive illustrations in a loose, chalky, hand-rendered style. His resulting National Park series features all 63 parks, plus other travel-related images. A Colorado native, Ken's excursions into the surrounding scenic parks continue to fuel his imagination for art and his love for the American landscape. Joel and Ken, welcome to our program today. I've been so excited for our conversation, so let's just get right to it. Your book, Wilderness and Wonder, is a stunning tribute to national parks. It's full of your beautiful illustrations, plus great travel tips. What inspired you to create this book, and how did this project come to life?
Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, no, this has been a dream project for both of us. Like you said, it features all 63 national parks illustrated by myself and directed creatively by Joel. And it's kind of an encyclopedia of different tips and facts. So I think going back to figuring out like what actually sparked this entire project, Joel and I were actually conversing and we had some books in mind. But a lot of the books that we have seen out there in the market had shown some illustration work, but not all 63 parks. So we kind of took that as a challenge of like, let's just put a book out there that features art for all the parks in a like comprehensive style. that was probably one of the inspirations. The second inspiration, I think, was just realizing when we did the 63 park series, poster series, we found that the world of parks is so much more complex and deep than just one poster can illuminate. So this was kind of our way of exploring the world of each of the parks in more of a like a full style. Just an example is like Olympic National Park. If anyone's ever been there, it's so diverse. Like you have the Hoh rainforest, you have the coast, and then you have the mountains. So like, how are you supposed to fit all of that into a single poster? Well, this book was kind of a way for us to be able to take all of those factors and features of a park and then put them in a comprehensive book. So that's kind of what inspired this entire project. And like I said, it's been a dream ever since we started.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Ken. It's wonderful as a reader to just be able to open up the book and dive right in and see the full spectrum that any park can bring. So your artwork blends a vintage aesthetic with modern storytelling. 1930s style travel posters have also resurged in popularity. Can you tell us a little bit about the artistic choices that you all make and your own inspiration?
Yeah, I'll chime in there. You see behind me a poster created by the WPA Works Progress Association back in the Great Depression era. These posters were dug up by Ranger Doug, and he's a kind of an inspiration to a lot of us poster artists who love that style from the Art Deco early 20th century era. The limited color palette, the oversimplification, the stylization was something that we just thought was beautiful. And unfortunately, there's only 14 of those posters ever made. And then World War II came along and redirected the efforts of the WPA, so the artists stopped doing park posters. Doug found those posters, rescued them, reproduced them, and inspired us to kind of do a whole collection of our own. And so these two that are up on the screen right now, Yellowstone and Yosemite, are kind of done in that same style of very limited colors. And it just kind of takes an iconic focal point and celebrates it as simply and as iconically as possible. That's kind of our inspiration, is the old stuff. So everything you'll see on our site kind of feels like it's classic and been around for a while, even though all of it's been created in the last 20 years.
Well, we are so grateful to both Ranger Doug and you two for bringing this art to life for us. Why do you think people connect it so deeply with this aesthetic when it comes to national parks? And, how do you balance nostalgia with fresh creative expression? You're taking something that's been done before, but putting a new twist on it. How do you find that balance?
So that's such a great question, because I think when I approach an artwork like this, like that's what I'm always constantly keeping in mind with every brushstroke. How can I create an emotive response to these images? And nostalgia and fresh creative expression are both powerful emotions for us. So I think, well, one story I actually have about this was Joel and I set up a gallery. It was actually down in Arkansas, and somebody who was visiting the gallery, and it was all 63 posters up on the wall, and somebody who was visiting the gallery came up to me and they were just telling me the story about how when they saw the Rocky Mountain National Park poster, they started crying. And that's not something that I run into every day. So it kind of like stunned me a little bit. And I was like, tell me more, like, what is that all about? I come to find out that this person had visited Rocky Mountain National Park with their grandparents. And I think it was just like a yearly annual thing that they were doing. And then their grandparents recently passed away. And so for them, it just was a reminder of those memories that they built with their grandparents and their family in that park. So that's what these images can do to for us when we experience a park. We build memories for them and nostalgia. And then these posters are hopefully they're supposed to tap into that nostalgia. So whether that's a scene, an animal, a lighting, a mood, whatever it is, like we want to really tap into that. And then of course, like fresh creative expression is always like, that's, as an artist, that's what you're always aiming for, because it attracts people. Creativity attracts attention and recognition, and you want to be fresh. You want to offer a new perspective of the world. So I think the best way for us to kind of tip that balance or find that balance between the two is really just visiting the parks ourselves. That's been a huge tactic for me with not just the poster series, but this book that we just published, was visiting the parks and kind of creating a well of nostalgia ourselves that we can draw from and create fresh art, but that also still has that connection with people. So like Everglades here, this poster that I created, a lot of Everglades posters have alligators in it. But when I was there, I was really impressed with like, okay, this is a huge birding site. Like there's so many birds in Everglades, and people know that too, but I wanted to draw on that nostalgia of maybe people are going there for the birds, not the alligators. And then it was my fresh creative expression to do that in this lighting and this mood with this egret. So that's just kind of an example of like how we try to find the balance between nostalgia and fresh creative expression.
I love that answer, Ken. Thank you for sharing that. And I know many of us have had emotional and formative experiences in our national parks. And I think it speaks to what you said about, when you design for the book, having a lot of different elements from one park in each park featured in the book allows you to really tap into those different places where people might have had those or felt that.
Yes.
So as I said, many folks have had these types of responses in national parks and have been deeply shaped by the experiences that we have there. What is your earliest memory of visiting a national park, and how did it nurture your love for these places?
My earliest park memory was going to Carlsbad Caverns with my family. And I went as a teenager, and I was kind of a punk back then. I wasn't very respectful of authority, and the park rangers were kind of worried about me and my brother. And they were kept a real close eye on us because we were so tempted to reach out and touch everything that we saw, and even had the terrible idea of what if I could get one of these to take home with me as a souvenir. And I'm so glad I didn't, because a few years later, I went to Ruby Falls, and it's near Rock City in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I went and visited this caves tour, and there was absolutely nothing to look at in there because over the last 75 years, everybody was allowed to just pick and take what they want, chisel off, break off little souvenirs to take home. And it was defaced. And I'm just so grateful for our park rangers and the people who work so hard to preserve everything for the next generation. So dummies like me back then, 17-year-old Joel, didn't ruin it for everybody else for centuries going forward.
Well, thanks to 17-year-old Joel for not doing that, because
Yeah.
now we can all appreciate that today. Ken, do you have a favorite national park memory you want to share?
Oh goodness. I mean, there's so many. Yeah, I'm sure I speak for a lot of people when I say like, how do you pick one national park memory? But yes, one in Grand Tetons was this photo right here. This was actually early on when I started exploring the national parks. So I grew up going to national parks, like the ones in the vicinity of Colorado, but not really branching out beyond that until about 5 or 6 years ago. And so this was one of my first trips to Grand Tetons. It was a spontaneous trip. I wasn't planning on it. It just was like literally, I think 2 days before, I was like, I've got a free weekend. Why not travel up there? So it's 8 hours away. So I drove up, and it was in September. And oh my goodness, I hit peak foliage season. Like I did not even plan that. So it's just one of those things where I'm like, wow, this is too perfect. And so I'm at Schwabacher's Landing, which is this little tiny dirt parking lot, if anyone's been there, along the Snake River. And you have this gorgeous backdrop of the Tetons. And of course, 10 million photographers down there all waiting with their tripods. But that's what's part of the fun of it, I think. So we're all on the banks of the river here. And then suddenly, just as the sun is cresting the horizon, this bull moose just walks out. It was like perfect timing. It was as if he was on cue and everything. And of course, it's hushed quiet, except for the like of the camera shutters all going off at 100 miles an hour. So that just like, I look back on that and I'm like, that was so formative for me. And then I also have another one that was really formative. So this was actually, I think the next year I visited Death Valley National Park, and I visited in January. So if anyone else has visited in the winter, you know that sometimes there's winter rainstorms that can come up in the mountains and then trickle down into the valley. And Badwater Basin, which is the lowest point in the valley, in fact, it's below sea level, it collects all the rainwater. And if we want to go to the next slide, this is what I saw. Essentially, the rainwater creates a puddle that goes for miles. So it's like probably about like 2 miles, I think, at least the time when we were there. And you can walk out on it, and it's just 6 inches deep. And if you stand really still, all the ripples like clear, and it looks like you're floating in the sky. Like everything is a mirror down and above. So it was amazing. So those are my two memories that just like for me is just an impactful nature experience where it's just like, wow, like you're met with the presence and the power of nature, and you just feel like these places are otherworldly. So yeah, those are the two memories for me.
Those are amazing. And yeah, I have a little bit of I'm a little jealous. I'm like, oh, I want to do both of those. I wish I'd been there for the moose appearance as well. So I know national parks inspire people in a lot of different ways through adventure, reflection, conservation. How do they inspire your artistic vision?
As an artist, my creative batteries are recharged every time I go out into nature and experience awe or wonder, or even stuff that's scary or dangerous. It kind of puts us in our place and helps us to feel as small as we actually are in contrast to nature's grandeur. And so I think all of us kind of yearn for a little bit of transcendence. And that's very inspiring in artwork because we're trying to communicate something that you really can't put into words. And sometimes photography is too literal, and sometimes words don't say enough, but a picture that you create and you can direct the eye to certain things on it, that really does help kind of us as artists. And hopefully our posters and the books and calendars will inspire others once we are showing our passion. That passion is contagious and we can get them excited about the same stuff that we're excited about.
Yeah, I love that. And I know having had your book on my desk the last couple weeks, there have been times where I've opened it up and felt transported. So it's amazing the way that art can really take us out of our everyday and into that place where we can feel that reflection and recharge those batteries. That's wonderful. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the parks y'all have visited. So the book features parks from across the country. Can you tell us a little bit about your travels to the parks while working on the book? I imagine that was probably a great part of this process, was doing the research and getting to go to all the parks.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. I like to say this is the dream part of the dream job. Just traveling around and visiting all these amazing places, all in one country too, which is just incredible to me. I'm sure the audience here knows, but there's 63 parks in 30 states and 2 territories. I'm currently on a quest to visit all 63 national parks myself. So I have visited 51. I have 12 left. The goal is to visit them by the end of this year. So in December, hopefully I'll hit American Samoa National Park and check out that one. But yeah, so a little glimpse of what it looks like traveling to gather research for each of these posters or for the book itself. All these trips are self-funded. So I try to be as economical and as efficient as possible when visiting a park. Kind of like a doctor with a scalpel. I'm like going in, I've researched ahead of time. Like I know what scenes I'm looking for. I know what time of day. I will even research the weather, like what kind of weather is coming up so that I can really find like those best windows. So of course, as an artist, golden hour for me is the best time to be out in the park. So right after sunset, right after sunrise, right before sunset. And then even sometimes that moody blue hour, which is right before sunrise and right after sunset. So when I visit a park, I will literally just hit the ground running. One example was just when I was in Glacier National Park, I spent 20 hours just on the move. I started in right before sunrise and then just literally was on the trails, driving around to different destinations through sunset. And I even stayed up into the night to catch some star astrophotography, just all to gather inspiration. I'm really trying to gather the essence of a park as much as I can. Like what makes this park special? Why is it protected? What about it is so evocative for people and for myself? I think something that's probably curious is you'd think as an illustrator, I would bring a sketchbook or I would bring like a tablet or something to draw on. I actually don't. I leave all that stuff at home. All I go with is just my camera. I go as light as I can because that allows me to stay fresh and to stay just in the moment with trying to figure out the whole like rendering and the whole color scheme and everything. I can figure that out later when I'm back at home. But when I'm in boots on the ground, when I'm on the trail, that's when I need to just like pay attention to what's right before me. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this Joshua Tree National Park poster is an example of that. I woke up, I think it was like at 4 a.m. to drive, like I think it's an hour to get back to the Cholla Cactus Garden. But that was so rewarding, like to see the sunrise coming up over the mountains, backlighting all of the spiky fuzzy cactus needles. And that's what created this poster art. So it's like, these aren't just images that I found on Google. They're not just images that I've like just created out of my head. They're from the actual research that I've done in the park. So, and if anyone's curious about the rest of my park travels to visit all 63, I have a website up. It's called kennethcrane.com. So it's KENNETHCRANE.com. And I've wanted to be a resource for people, for anyone who wants to visit the parks themselves. They can kind of follow in my footsteps of where did he go for sunrise? What was the best place for sunset? Where can you stay? What campgrounds were worth it? Where's centrally located dining and stuff like that? So I'd encourage anyone, if you're curious, check it out.
That's awesome. Thanks, Ken. And speaking of when you say that you're out in the park all day like this, I hope you're staying hydrated.
That's right.
But it sounds great, like you're really living it up. And I appreciate what you say about gathering the essence of the park and really being able to speak to anything that could be evocative to a visitor. So speaking of that, the book is full of illustrations of natural history, flora, fauna, geological formations, and to your point about your website, insider knowledge. Do you have a favorite off the beaten path spot in any of the national parks that you'd recommend for fellow travelers? So you do have to reveal it and recommend it to other travelers.
Yes, I know. That's always the trick. Like, do you tell people? Because then it's not off the beaten path. But yes, I'm in the business of sharing anything that's good. So any beauty, any like good trails, any secrets, the more the merrier in my mind. But yes, right here is a picture of White Sands National Park. Just recently created a national park. I think it was like 5 or so years ago. This is not quite off the beaten path, but the sunset at White Sands is probably the dreamiest sunset I have ever seen in my entire life. Which I don't know if that's saying a lot or not, but the sky, just as you can see in this picture, the sky just turns these candy color orange and pink and purple, and then the white sands that look like snow, but they're hot. It's just crazy, reflect all of that, and it's gorgeous. So I don't know if it's necessarily off the beaten path, but if you don't stay through sunset, you're going to miss something like this. So that's, for me, that's something that like has just caught my attention of like, it's not necessarily where you are, but when you are. And then here's the park poster that kind of came from those photos and inspired from those trips to the park.
That's beautiful. And you're right. Dreamy is the first word that comes to mind when I look at those images. It's gorgeous. So this is an example of when something goes really, really right, I think. But what were some of the biggest artistic or logistical challenges in bringing this book to completion?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Joel could attest to this. We set an aggressive timeline on this book. So with 63 parks, you can't really take your time to draw out each park slowly, and you want to do your best work, but you also have to keep going. So we set an aggressive timeline of 4 parks per month, and we did it for 15 months straight. So I'm illustrating, researching, visiting each of these parks. I'm sending them back to Joel. He's approving sketches. I'm giving him roughs. He's giving me feedback. So we're doing this on an ongoing basis, and it's a rolling basis. So when I finish 4 parks, I start on the next 4 parks and then the next 4 parks. So that's about 10 to 12 pages of each book, just consistently for over a year, which it was a lot, but it was also so fun. And I know that like, that was the only way that this project was going to be reasonably tackled, because I think if you did any less parks per month, then this would have taken way too long and you wouldn't have had a really good product. And if you did it any quicker, I think it would have been too sloppy of a product in the end as well. So that to me is like, when you ask the question, what was the biggest challenge? That was my biggest challenge.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was so glad you could do that, Ken, because that's when my Parkinson's was advancing and I was no longer able to go and hike and draw and do the things that you can do as well as you do now. And so I kind of shifted in this project from the illustrator that I used to be to more of a composer, director, conductor, and let the virtuoso play his instrument like he does. And it was really fun to kind of take on a different role as publisher and director instead of being the guy out there in the field, because I couldn't, no way I could do what you did, Ken. You have the energy and the talent and the drive to just push forward, and I can give you a crazy deadline and you just master it. So I was so pleased I couldn't have done that by myself. None of us could have done it by ourselves.
Well, and you've got the vision, Joel. Yeah, I can't imagine doing what you do, where you have it all in your head and you can just see it through to completion. So, make a great team.
I just hear so much gratitude between the two of you. Like what a duo, what a team. We've talked about some of the challenges, we talked about some of the wonder. Were there any fun or unexpected moments while researching or illustrating Wilderness and Wonder that you all want to share?
For sure, for sure. Yeah, one of the funnest, like kind of craziest memories was camping on Anacapa Island, which is in Channel Islands National Park off the coast of California. And I was it a nightmare? Was it a dream? Who knows? But essentially, I was arriving on the island, and this is in late May. And if anyone knows Anacapa Island in late May, it is bombarded, I should say, with 20,000 seagulls. Like every year, they nest here because there's no natural predators, and so the island is literally crawling with all these seagulls. They're nesting on the ground, they're flying over your tent, they're on the roofs of these old ruins that are on there. So it was like kind of a nightmare because it was so noisy and so like smelly. But at the same time, it was one of those park experiences where you're like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity I will never get again. So for me, that was one of those moments that I like to call like a magical moment where you're just like, where did this come from? How is this even possible? Just so spectacular, so impressive.
That's wild. Watching that video is wild.
Not crazy.
I think what you said, that magic, like your work, the two of you together, your work beautifully captures this spirit in national parks. How do you see art playing a role in conservation and awareness and that part of the park space?
I think people protect and prioritize the things that they love. And so Ken and I both love the national parks. We love to hike. We love to get out there. And so what we're trying to do is depict the stuff that meant a lot to us, hoping that it'll connect with other people. And people also want to decorate with the things that are attached to their memories, their fondest moments with their loved ones, or in a special place and a time. And so we're kind of creating ways for people to actually take our art and fall in love with the parks even more. And when they start falling in love with the parks, they become promoters of the parks, they become advocates of the parks, and they want to protect what they love.
Yeah, that's really thoughtful and really insightful. For along those lines, as you're talking about future generations, protecting what they love, being introduced to what they love, what advice would you all give to aspiring artists or designers who want to use their talents to support conservation efforts?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is hone your skill, like really, really be good and excellent at your craft, because the better you are at your craft, the louder your message will be. So if you're really passionate about the parks and if you're really passionate about preservation and conservation, get good at your skill and practice. But I think also along with that is this sense of like, just start something, just create something, get out there and add something to the world. Don't wait for perfection. So obviously, yes, seek perfection in your craft and excellence in your work, but it's a journey. And so just getting your foot out the door and starting that journey is going to be like, that's what's going to actually get you up and going. I think for me, it was, there's a lot of art in this book that if I had infinite amount of time, I would go back and tweak and do this over again. But at some point, you have to just say as an artist, like, you know what, I'm on a journey of getting better. I'm going to put this out there, and then the next one's going to be better. And then the next one's going to be better. And so that's my advice. If you're interested in creating art for the national parks, just start doing it. Just get it out there and put something out in the world, and then see what traction that gives you and where you go from there.
I love that idea. Just get out there, just put yourself out there, start somewhere, right?
Yes.
Well, we have had quite a few questions come in. If you saw me looking over here, I'm looking at all of them coming in. So I'm hoping we can turn to Q&A from the audience for a couple minutes. Lots of questions coming in around different things that you've encountered while traveling. So I'm going to start with one of those. Have you had, or did you have any frightening wildlife encounters while traveling? How have you stayed safe from wildlife while traveling as well?
You want to get that one, Ken?
Yes, I can. And then Joel, if you have anything, I'd love to hear yours too. I was once we were up in Denali and we're going down this trail and it's a wooded trail, so you can't really see around the bend. And there's this couple that was walking in front of us. They turn around the bend and then immediately they start coming back around. And we're like, wow, that was quick. I wonder why they just turned around. And then so we kind of approached tentatively, like maybe there's something around the corner. There's a cow moose like right on the trail around the bend that we didn't see. And so we like stop in our tracks, we slowly back up, don't turn or anything. And it starts walking towards us on the trail. And we're like, oh gosh, like this is not good. And then like what I've heard with moose is that allow them to get through, don't obviously interact with them, and keep your distance. So I like try to step off the trail to let it pass by. What I didn't know, so this is a good lesson to be aware of your surroundings, was I stepped into the direction of where her calf was, and did not know that I had stepped between, which alarmed the mother. She became more like alarmed and started walking towards me. And so thankfully, the story doesn't end in tragedy. I jumped across the trail to the other side. She found her baby and they ran off into the woods. But that was one of those heart pounding moments where you're like, whoo, that could have ended bad.
Yep. Yep, that could have ended bad. I'm sweating a little here in that one.
Right? Yes.
You have to respect the wildlife for sure, but also your own folly. Like we went to Arches and didn't realize that there's only one water fill-up station all the way at the top of the park at the end of the road. And so if you want to see everything in between, you start at the bottom visitor center and fill up your water bottles. If you didn't take enough, you're going to run out, and you either have to drive all the way to the end and double back, or every time we came to another drive-off spot, we start looking for bathrooms, which they had, but they didn't have any running water. And so hydration is what kills probably a lot of people in the parks these days, especially in the hotter, drier places. And so we learned a lesson: just take more than you could possibly think you needed, because you never know how hot you're going to get.
Yeah, Joel, that's a great reminder that frightening encounters don't just have to be with wildlife. They can also be with poor planning or limited resources. I'm going to ask you guys one more about some travel, and then I want to get back to the artistic piece of this. So is there one park that you visited that doesn't get the foot traffic or the recognition as maybe the most well-known ones that you feel is a hidden gem, or you would love to, give a shout out to?
Joel, would you like to take that one?
Good.
Okay.
You've probably been to more parks than me, so go ahead.
Okay. Theodore Roosevelt National Park, I think, is underrated. When I visited it, maybe it was because I had low expectations myself, because I hadn't heard much about it. I just kind of assumed, oh, this is like Badlands, but like the little stepbrother of Badlands. And when I visited, I was blown away with just how beautiful it was. It's this like pristine grassland prairie ecosystem. You have an abundance of wildlife, like more wildlife than I had seen in many of the parks that I had, maybe with the exception of Yellowstone, than I had seen. There's bison, turkeys, prairie dogs, pronghorn, like just everywhere. And I think one thing that's so idyllic about it is it's pretty quiet. So again, it's one of those like conundrums of like, okay, you tell people about it and then it gets busy and that kind of loses some of its sheen. But I think what's so great is that it's in the middle of North Dakota, like middle of nowhere. And so you have to travel off the beaten path to even get to it. So that's one of the reasons I liked it. It felt like I was away from the city, away from the crowds. And it's just gorgeous. The river winding through it, the Little Missouri River, with all of its bends and it's snaking around, you get good like views of it. It's gorgeous at sunrise, and the sunset too is beautiful in the grasslands. So that's what I would say. Theodore Roosevelt National Park, check it out.
Well,
I have
that
a
sounds like
secret park in Utah, Natural Bridges National Monument. It's not a national park; it's a national monument, and that place is unbelievable. And it's not crowded at all because it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And Utah already has 5 great parks, and so everybody goes to the 5 biggies, and they forget about some of these little guys. And even some of the state parks in Utah are incredible, like Goblin Valley. You feel like you're in another world with some of the weird formations and stuff.
I love that, Joel. And thank you for the shout out to all of the NPS sites. The National Park Service oversees over 430 different locations. So you're right, the national monuments, some of those lesser known park sites are really gorgeous and definitely worth a stop on your trek. I'm going to shift us back to art because that's something that I know folks are excited to hear more about. Um, Someone asked in the chat, which park poster was the most involved to create? And I'm going to let you interpret that as you wish.
From this series, Ken, I'll let you talk about that because you're the one that had to work so hard on all these posters for this book.
All right. Oh man, the most involved. It's a great question. One that comes to mind is Channel Islands. I'm not sure if we have a photo of that or not, but it's an underwater scene. It wasn't necessarily involved because like I had to visit, I had to scuba dive underwater or anything, but it was involved in that I had to really like kind of reshift my mind and use my imagination more. It's not just drawing from a photograph. It was more of trying to understand like, what does this underwater kelp forest world look like? So the image has some seaweed and some kelp with some fish swimming in the foreground, and then it has a silhouette of a sea lion in the background. And so for me, that one was the most involved of trying to figure out like, okay, how can I wrap my head around something that I can't physically in the moment visit myself, but it's a part of the park that I want to illuminate or highlight for people to recognize that like a lot of these parks, for instance, are not just on land, like Biscayne Bay or Dry Tortugas. Like they have so much boundaries underneath the water. And that's something that like I wanted to highlight, especially in Channel Islands. So involved, I'm interpreting that as creatively like trying to imagine it more than I can just render it from a photograph.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great answer. Um, this is a kind of a businessy question for you all. Is there a piece that y'all are proud of, but it doesn't sell as well as you would expect it to?
After doing 3,000 posters, publishing 2,000 posters, illustrating a bunch of them myself, but also illustrating and producing prints from other artists that I collaborate with, we've got a whole bunch of stepchildren that we love dearly, but they just don't get bought as often.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because we fell in love with an aspect of a park that's just so personal and so everybody doesn't know about it and couldn't relate to it as much. But I also have some favorites that are favorites because my kids and my wife are the people in there, because when I took the reference shot, they were in the frame and we went ahead and rendered the people that need to be there as, and I can tell who they are, but we do most of our people as silhouettes so that you can imagine yourself in there.
I love that, Joel. Little Easter eggs and the silhouettes are actually your family. That's very sweet. Ken, do you have one that you're really proud of, but you think flies under the radar?
Yes, I'm really happy and pleased with the Gates of the Arctic National Park poster they created.
Mhm.
It pictures a wolf underneath the Northern Lights. And so I think that one for me was just like a breakthrough and like, I figured out how to render this and capture this mood of like wonder with the Northern Lights. But of course, who's been to Gates of the Arctic National Park that's going to want to buy that poster? So for me, it's kind of like, oh man, like
We sell about 4 copies a year of that one.
exactly right. So which is understandable because you want that connection. You want to buy the poster or the artwork that you've personally been to. So
Yeah.
I totally understand that. But it's one of those parts where I'm like, oh man, I'm happy with how this one turned out.
We do have a print, a multi-image print that has all 63 parks together in it, and that has to be in there to so people can see all the 63. And so it really is inspiring to see it as one of the parks you probably will never get to because you have to be dropped off in an airplane to get there.
Mhm.
But at least it's included, and so people can aspire to it.
Yeah, I love that. It's on my list. I aspire to it. That's a great question or a great segue to another audience question. How are the decisions made on which parks you illustrate in which order? You know, how do you approach all of this? And do you have on your list like any that you want to get back into or historical sites you might want to explore? That's another one that our folks asked.
Organizing for this book, we decided to go alphabetical order. So
Nice.
that's how we prioritized the parks, not by importance or most visited or whenever it was established, but it's just in alphabetical order for the book. But the next book that we'll be working on, which is Beyond the Parks, and it talks about all the hundreds of other national monuments, national historic sites, national seashores. That's going to be a matter of prioritizing what we think most people could go and see easily on a trip around the United States, because there's too many to fit into one book. So we're having to pick and choose, unfortunately. We have to leave some of that. We'll mention them all, but we won't be able to do poster art of every one of those.
For sure. For sure. That's good to know. So, what's next for Anderson Design Group? Do you all have any upcoming projects related to national parks or travel? You want to talk more about any of them? Like, what can we expect next from you guys?
Yeah, I just dropped a hint of that Beyond the Parks book. We're
Yeah.
working on it right now. It's a lot of work because we're going to illustrate at least another 150 smaller parks, less visited parks, off the beaten path parks. And Ken's not going to be illustrating that stuff because he's got his own really cool photo project he's working on right now. And you want to talk about that, Ken?
Yeah, sure. I kind of was teasing it a little earlier, but with this quest to visit all 63 national parks, it actually started from this book project and from the poster project that we worked on. I was taking all this photography from these parks, and I was just realizing, like, I have quite a comprehensive library for each national park. And I thought, like, I don't want to just sit on this. I should do something with it. So I'm creating a website that's a resource for people to visit the parks. And I want it to be as helpful as possible. So feedback is always welcome. And with the goal of, hopefully, I want to create a photography coffee table book that is more of like a photography guide to photographing national parks. So one of the biggest things that I ran into was really when I would see somebody's photo online on a blog or on a website or something, or in a book, I was always curious, like, where was this taken? How did you get to this point to take this photo? How can I recreate this scene? How can I experience this grandeur? And a lot of the captions were just lacking. And maybe that was intentional on the photographer's part, because there is some mystery and intrigue to not knowing where the photo is taken. But for me, it's like, I want to share a good thing. And so for me, that's this project that I'm working on, is this book, this website. Again, that's kennethcrane.com. And just allowing people to share and experience the same things that I've shared and experienced. And I would love also for it, maybe this is far down the road, but for it to be a community where people can also say, hey, you didn't see this, but I saw this, and share that with other people. So it can be kind of like this standing on each other's shoulders of park experiences.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. I think that all of us on the call could agree that lovers of parks, appreciators of parks, protectors of parks, we are a mighty community, and we are one that often likes to band together and share our experiences with each other. Well, everyone, the bell is starting to toll, so it's time to start wrapping up our programming for today. To all of you online, we are so grateful that you could join us today. Each of you is responsible for the stewardship of our national parks, and a heartfelt thank you from the team here at the National Park Foundation. Joel and Ken, thank you so much for both being here today and for your work inspiring so many visitors to these historical, cultural, and meaningful places. And thank you, Joel, for giving today's viewers a special 20% off discount code from Anderson Design Group. To those listening, you can find that in the chat. The team has dropped that in the chat and in an email coming to your inbox soon. There were so many great questions in the Q&A that we didn't have time to get to today, and we do really want to hear from you. So please email us at events@nationalparks.org to stay connected, to ask any questions or anything on your mind. Our national parks do so much for us, and each of you is a part of preserving and protecting these incredible places. We hope you all continue to tune in with us for future programming, and we look forward to talking with everyone again soon. Thank you all so much, and have a great rest of the day. Take care.